Hey friends, this is Jeff Morgan. Over the last year, I've had the privilege and the honor of interviewing some of the most powerful and influential doctors of our times on the topics of health and nutrition. And as a seeker of truth, I have found these interviews crucial in the understanding of how our dietary choices affect our health, the environment, and the well-being of the animals that we share this planet with. These videos are littered with life-changing and incredible information, and sometimes I like to take the highlights and put them together in a video like this so that you can have the opportunity to see incredible doctors that have devoted their lives to truth-seeking and to the betterment of humanity in one video. So enjoy what these leading doctors have to say.
Right. Well, you talk a lot about grains, and in your book you mentioned it a lot. Now, grains are getting a bad rap. I mean, I know some people that do have legitimate issues, but anti-nutrients such as lectins and gluten and phytates are now taking the blame for people's inflammatory disease-related issues. And I mean, it doesn't take a lot of surfing to hear statements like the ravages of gluten or the phytates rendering vitamins and minerals in grains null and void, and that, grains are naturally selected to ward off pests. Therefore, there's no reason at all for humans to be eating grains because they provide no nutritional value short of fiber. What's up with that?
It's crazy. I mean, yeah, it's a very kind of common internet meme. But if you actually look at the science, you'd see actually the reverse story. So if you look, in fact, I looked to see if I can find any study that found a kind of a pro-inflammatory effect of whole grains. Couldn't find a single one outside of some, rare autoimmune diseases like celiac disease, or if you have an allergy or something. But you put people on whole grains, and what happens? Their inflammatory markers go down. C-reactive protein, tumor necrosis factor, you kind of go on down the list. And without exception, I couldn't find one. Whole grains are anti-inflammatory foods. Legumes are anti-inflammatory foods, protect against inflammatory diseases. Or at least that's what the science says. I mean, but it's surprising that they can get away with saying something that's just so utterly opposite of what the balance of evidence shows.
I want to talk about soy for a minute. I love soy. Soy is a regular part of my and my family's diet. We eat edamame, organic tofu, organic soy milk, but many people are still afraid of soy. They feel that the phytoestrogens will increase the risk of breast cancer in the same way that estrogen coming from animal products will. So they stay away from it. Is this fear justified, or is it just another myth?
No, it's another myth. It's black and white kind of thinking, linear kind of thinking. Basically, I refer to it as reductionism. You're just taking one component out of that food, in this case, out of the soy, and getting concerned about it. The estrogen material. Well, it's true. Soybeans and other legumes, they've got compounds in there that are estrogen-like, and they tend to have estrogen-like properties when they're studied in isolation. But quite frankly, at the level they're present in food, that's good stuff. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. Because the estrogenic material in the plants at the level we tend to consume them as, what they do, they tend to act as anti-estrogens when compared with the mammalian and estrogens. Of course, women, for the most part, women are producing lots of estrogens, mammalian estrogen, if you will. And when that's in excess, that's associated with breast cancer and uterine cancer and so forth. And so, the soybean is helpful because the level of that kind of estrogen is antagonistic to the estrogens that are being overly produced. So, soy is a good food.
This is a two-part question. Is there such thing as a protein deficiency, and what are some of the hazards of protein in excess?
Protein deficiency, there is such thing as a protein deficiency, but it's almost always part and parcel of a calorie deficiency.
Right.
So you're going to see it in starving children in Ethiopia. What's called kwashiorkor, where they get big bloated bellies because they don't have enough protein, so they get edematous and things like that. In Western worlds, extremely rare. I mean, it is, they recently did the NHANES data poll where they look at what people eat. And in our country, we eat way by enough protein, way by enough. There's very little to no protein deficiency. Meanwhile, we're completely deficient on fiber. Less than 3% of the people get the RDA of fiber, and the RDA is low. problems with eating too much protein are so many. It causes acidosis, causes inflammation, can cause autoimmune disease, can cause cancer, can cause hypertension, definitely associated with diabetes, and with a shorter life expectancy and a more unpleasant life at that. So, I think the idea that more is better can lead to the many diseases that we have in Western society, which are basically just diseases of gluttony.
Right. Well, I've heard you mention oils quite a bit, and I don't eat oils. And I get a lot of comments from stunned viewers that still think that oil is a health food. Can you explain in greater detail why free oil or extracted oil, including olive and coconut oil, should not be part of a healthy diet?
Right. Well, they're isolated concentrated nutrients. They're not foods. So what you do is you take a banana and you strip the oil out of it and you leave everything else behind, the vitamins, the minerals, the fiber, the protein, etc. And so now you're sitting here with a cup full of banana oil. This is not food.
Suntan lotion, maybe, but
maybe, I don't know.
I'm joking.
That really wasn't in my generation. Right. But anyway, so you're left with isolated concentrated oil, which is 9 calories per gram. It's the most concentrated of all calorie sources available. Meat and dairy is 4 calories per gram. Plain white sugar is 4 calories per gram. Starches are about 1 calorie per gram. So, oil is 9 times more concentrated than, say, potatoes. Probably 18 times more concentrated if I went down to the raw data. Mm-hmm. So it's isolated concentrated nutrients. You take in this oil, and what happens is it has profound effects on the system, not just by the fact that it's stored. Remember, the fat you eat is the fat you wear. But of all the substances isolated that have been tested, it is the strongest promoter of cancer. Initiation and promotion of cancer is oil. And some of the oils are very, very, very toxic to the arteries. And I would not leave olive oil out of that list. There is scientific evidence that shows that olive oil is quite toxic to the arteries. David Blankenhorn published a study back in the late 70s, early 80s, where he looked at people in terms of reversal of artery disease. And what he found was they had to decrease their total fat intake. They did not see the benefits from decreasing monounsaturated fat, which is olive oil, or saturated fat intake, or other polyunsaturated fat intake. They did not see the benefit from decreasing mono or polyunsaturated fat intakes in terms of reversal of artery disease. Excuse me, if I remember correctly, they did show a reversal by decreasing saturated fat, which is animal fat. Mm-hmm. But it was a big point of this paper, which is easy to find, David Blankenhorn, testing real people in a real controlled situation and finding that reducing olive oil and polyunsaturated fats did not slow or reverse atherosclerosis, in other words, coronary artery disease. And many other studies show that. You plain and simple have to stay away from these oils. They are toxic. Eating the oil in the coconut or in the nut will be fattening for you because it's rich food, but it's not toxic because it's surrounded by all the other phytonutrients that are essential for it to be properly metabolized.
Controversy time. I have a question directly from one of my viewers. I'd like to hear his approach towards other camps, scientists and scholars. The paleo people have their experts. The Harvard Food Study suggests that current data supports eating a variety of foods, including some meat and fish, is the optimal approach towards health and so forth. It just seems so confusing and useless when I speak with intelligent omnivores. They always claim that most peer-reviewed studies from major resources adopt a more diverse food plan rather than 100% plant-based. I mean, you must get this a lot. I mean, do you believe that other camps, scientists, and scholars give more of a patronizing answer to this based on what they feel that people can or can't handle, or the simple, unabashed truth? I mean, I'm looking at the Harvard study, or the Harvard Eating Healthy Plate right now, and they're calling oils healthy, and are pairing poultry and fish with beans and nuts as healthy sources of protein. I mean, what say you on this?
So they're very explicit about this. They're putting forth a diet that they feel is achievable, right? Is doable. And so, for example, a classic example is the so-called DASH diet. So if you go to the American Heart Association, American College of Cardiology, they recommend lifestyle as the first line intervention for heart disease. What do they recommend as part of their lifestyle? They recommend this DASH diet, the dietary approach to stop hypertension, very famous diet, ranked number 1, U.S. News and World Report is the healthiest diet, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, let's go back and look at the DASH diet. It was created in the 70s by Dr. Frank Sachs out of Harvard, and he was the one that did all this really groundbreaking work on studying strict vegetarians and found that they were the only population in the Western world that actually had ideal blood pressures, coming in at about 110/65. These are the kind of blood pressures you see in rural China, rural Africa, people eating these plant-based diets, low sodium, low processed food, plant-based diets. But in the Western world, the only people, so he designed this diet. He was the chair of the design committee for the DASH diet. He designed a diet very explicitly. He talks about it in the landmark paper saying, we did this, we created this diet to capture the blood pressure lowering benefits of the strict vegetarian diet, but contain enough animal products to make it palatable to the general population. That's basically a quote, a direct quote from the source. Okay. And his own, so it's a low meat diet, includes low fat dairy. His own research shows that you add dairy to a vegetarian diet, their blood pressures go up. You take a vegetarian, you give them meat, their blood pressures go up. You take meat eaters, you remove meat from their diet, blood pressures go down. It's like not rocket science, but you can see what they were thinking. They're thinking, look, on a population, we can't tell everyone to eat a strictly vegetarian diet. That's what the science shows. No one's going to do it. So on a population scale, if we soft pedal the truth, right, the American public can't handle the truth. If we soft pedal the truth and tell people to cut down on meat, right, then, more people will do it. And overall, will actually reduce more suffering. We'll save more lives than if we actually told people the truth. All right. But, so I understand that kind of population approach, but, tell that to the 1,000 families a day that lose a family member to high blood pressure, kills 400,000 Americans every year. All right. Maybe it's time to start telling Americans the truth.
What's your opinion about the paleo diet? I'm not an advocate in any way, but that being said, a lot of people are finding benefit with this way of eating, at least in the short term, which is why this style of eating has gained such popularity.
Well, sure. In the short term, that's true. And I know the fellow who started that, Lauren Cordain, at Colorado State University. In fact, I've debated him a couple times. So I know they're thinking, I think, quite well. They have kind of tossed in the idea that don't use dairy. They say that, which is a good thing. They understand that vegetables are important. They'll say that. That's their messaging. So they say no dairy, vegetables. Sounds good.
Right.
But in reality, when you really bear down on it, they're talking about a low-carb diet. In other words, really get all the carbohydrates as low as you can.
Right.
And that means the rest of it is fat and protein. And this has turned out to be a fantastic marketing thing because they're getting a little truth here, kind of make it look good. And people do lose weight, like they did on the Atkins thing too. They do lose weight if they have excess weight to lose. They'll tend to lose some weight in the beginning. But in the long run, they're consuming a high protein, high fat diet, they're going to be in trouble. And if anyone doubts that statement, all they need to look at cultures around the world, consuming various levels of animal-based protein, for example, or fat. That's irrefutable stuff. The higher the consumption of animal protein and fat, the higher is the risk for heart disease and cancer. It's just there. Nobody will ever show the reverse. Right. So the long-term effects of using something like an Atkins diet or a paleo diet and stuff like that, the consequences are serious.
Now, another thing that's apparent in Proteinaholic is that not only has the Western world become obsessed with protein, people have also become carbophobic at the same time. And I'm stating a quote from your book on page 149 that where you talk about diabetes and the correlation between meat and diabetes instead of sugar and diabetes. And you state, our bodies are literally designed to live on sugar. Every cell in our body takes in sugar and turns it into energy via a pathway called the Krebs cycle. Whether by divine design or evolution, we are literally created to process sugar and starch. Can you talk about that just?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. People always think that carbs make them fat. Now, the truth of the matter is it's very difficult, almost impossible for carbs to be turned to fat. So when you eat carbs, they immediately get stored by your muscle glycogen. We store glycogen in our muscles and in our liver, and our bodies want a high glycogen load. When your glycogen levels get low, you feel weak and crappy. It's the idea of bonking during a race and things like that is low glycogen levels. So you need, before a carb can be turned to fat, what's called de novo lipogenesis. Before your body will start de novo lipogenesis, where it turns carbs to fat, all of the glycogen stores have to be completely saturated. And so on the average man, that's about 400 grams of carbohydrate. And then on top of that, you have to be in calorie excess. So not only do you have to have 400 grams of carbs, you also have to be eating more than whatever your basal metabolic rate is.
Wow.
And so that's a lot of eating. Now, some people do it, obviously, but that's a lot of eating to get there. Meanwhile, fat, when you eat fat, it gets immediately absorbed to fat. I mean, the fat gets broken down into fat cells that are triglycerides that go through your blood, and your fat cells just pick them up and hold on to them. So fat, Dr. McDougall says the fat you eat is the fat you wear, but not true with carbs.
And I hear you talk about people worrying so much about their micronutrients, vitamins and minerals. Yeah. I mean, is there a potential problem with ODing, overdosing on vitamins and minerals?
There's a huge problem. Not just a theoretical problem.
Yeah.
There have been multiple studies done. There have been studies on folic acid, beta carotene, vitamin E, even vitamin C. And vitamin D for sure we need to talk about.
Yeah, we're going to get there.
That's the biggest scam around.
Yep.
These have been done by major studies that have been done, some paid for by drug industries, and reviewed by the Cochrane Collaboration, which is a very respected organization of scientists. And what they show is if you take these supplements, these isolated concentrated nutrients, if you take them, you increase your risk of cancer, heart disease, and overall death by 20 to 30%. Cochrane said that if you take multiple vitamins, like the kind my mom used to give me, the one a day, multiple vitamins, for a million vitamin takers, there are 9,000 extra deaths. So these are not a matter of just wasting your money. These are a matter of being very, very toxic because, and if you just think about it for a minute, they cause nutritional imbalances because you're feeding isolated concentrated nutrients to a system that was designed to bite into a banana or a potato. It wasn't designed to get a 1,000-fold increase in an isolated concentrated nutrient, and you get basically poisoned.
Yeah.
Sad to say, and the research is consistent on this, by the way. You just don't read it. And the drug companies, which are the vitamin pill supplement companies, they put billions of dollars into trying to convince you to buy their products. Why would they not? This is just business.
Right.
You and your family just get in the way. Don't think this is personal.
In our last interview, we discussed soy with regards to women and breast cancer. But I want to talk this time about men, manly men, about man boobs, or in scientific terms, gynecomastia. Does soy have a feminizing effect on men and lower libido? If this were true, if it were true, I'd have double D's by now and be avoiding my wife. But the opposite is the case. Clear things up for the men out there.
So, there are two case reports in the medical literature of feminizing effects of soy consumption. They were at massive amounts of soy. Here, I was just looking at those. It's probably the best review is in a journal called Fertility and Sterility. The title is Soybean Exposure Does Not Have Feminizing Effects on Men. But that's in general. But look, you can't overdo it. So there's two papers. Trying to look at the quantity here. I have some videos coming up on the phytoestrogens in beer, actually. The hops have very powerful phytoestrogens, more so than soy. Yeah, two case reports, feminizing effects, 14 to 20 servings of soy a day, soy foods a day. So 14 to 20 servings of soy food a day is not a good idea. But at reasonable doses, even higher than the 1 or 2 servings a day you see in populations like Japanese. They do not have feminizing effects. So let me see, 20 servings. So that's like 5. If you ate 5 liters, so over a gallon of soy milk a day, for example,
Wow.
that could have feminizing effects. So it's the dose that makes the poison.
Yeah.
But at typical doses, no feminizing effects, and actually beneficial effects like reducing risk of prostate cancer, etc.
Next question. How is the paleo diet? How is it flawed? Because on book covers, people can go out to bookstores or whatever and see claims like lose weight and reverse autoimmune disease. So, we got to be a little more clear about the flaws.
Yeah, look, if you go from a standard American diet of cheeseburgers, fries, and a chocolate shake to a paleo diet where you're eating a little meat but lots of vegetables, you're going to be a hell of a lot healthier. And yeah, you're going to lose weight. And yes, your disease processes are going to get better because number 1, you're increasing produce. Number 2, you're decreasing processed food. And so the paleo diet is a very good alternative to a standard American diet. However, paleo diet, first of all, if you're being literal about the paleo diet, then the paleo diet's ridiculous because there is nothing paleo about a cow. There is nothing paleo about a chicken. Paleo man was mainly a gatherer, not mainly a hunter. And now they've got paleo bars. Like the whole idea of a paleo bar in a wrapper is just insane.
Right.
So that's an insane idea. First of all, let's start with the fact that when they look at fossils of ancient man, Australopithecus, and they do carbon studies, they've been eating bark and leaves and plants. But if you're looking at it just from a diet standpoint, the paleo diet, it's hard for me to even talk about it because everyone has a different notion of what a paleo diet is. But I think it has shifted towards too much protein. Like the idea has been paleo, lots of meat, which should be wrong. Paleo should be lots of gathered food. So lots of fruits and lots of vegetables, a little meat here and there, mainly grass-fed meat. Hopefully, if you're really doing paleo, you should be doing meat that you hunted, that you hunted out there. Now, even with hunted meat, even with grass-fed meat, you're still getting N-nitroso compounds. You're still, when you cook it, get heterocyclic amines. It still increases your IGF-1. That's great for building muscle. IGF-1 will build muscle for you. Also great for developing cancer. And so you're going to still be getting all these things, heme, iron, and all that stuff that's bad for you. But if you're countering that with lots of phytonutrients and stuff, it could be healthy. I don't think it's as healthy as a plant-based diet, but it's certainly healthier than a standard American diet.
Well, there are doctors at weight loss clinics telling people to stop eating fruit to lose weight and that they can get all the phytonutrients they need from vegetables. Is there any truth to this?
Can you get all your phytonutrients from vegetables? Maybe. I'm trying to think. Well, you can't get all, but you may be able to get all that you need, but certainly should not stop eating fruit. So the number 1 risk factor for death in the world, number 1 dietary risk factor for death in the world is not eating enough fruit. So not eating enough fruit kills more people in this world than eating processed meat.
No way.
So this is the Global Burden of Disease Study, largest study of risk factors in human history, funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Number 1 dietary risk factor, right, was not eating enough fruit.
Oh.
So we have this tremendous body of evidence that fruit's one of the healthiest things. In fact, evolutionarily, we're more frugivorous than anything else.
Yeah.
Our bodies were made to eat fruit. So, for example, the fact that we don't have vitamin C,
Yep.
that gives us a sense of we eat lots of fruit all day.
Yeah.
Really. Now, there's vitamin C found throughout the plant kingdom, but and it just doesn't make sense in terms of weight loss, right? Fruit is packed with fiber and water, both of which have 0 calories, and packed with nutrition. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I love what you said when you were speaking about, is it a lollipop or lentils in terms of carbohydrates? People are so afraid of the sugar, but you're not talking about refined sugar that's placed in candy bars. You're talking about a piece of fruit that's packed with, fiber and phytonutrients and vitamins, minerals.
Exactly.
Well, I hope you liked the video. It's some pretty powerful stuff. If you'd like to watch the interviews in their entirety, I'm linking them down below in the description and the playlist up here for easy access. And if you're new to Guilt-Free Vegan, hit that subscribe button and you'll be the first to know when new videos come out. Until next time, keep pushing for healthy habits and stay mindful of the impact that you have on your health, the environment, and the animals that we share this planet with.